Well, it's officially the most wonderful time of the year, and by that, of course, I mean Halloween season. To kick things off this year, I thought I'd start by talking about one of my favorite spooky franchises, that being, of course, Scooby-Doo. I have a particular love for Scooby-Doo, and have ever since I was a kid. To this day, it remains my comfort show, with the original Scooby-Doo Where Are You and What's New Scooby-Doo being my favorite incarnation so far. In all my years as a part of this fandom, I've picked up some opinions along the way. Some are shared by the majority of Scooby-Doo lovers, others are not. So today, at my own risk, I thought I'd share some of my unpopular Scooby-Doo opinions. Opinions being the operative word. If you disagree with me, that is totally fine, just be nice about it in the comments. Alright, with that said, let's jump right into it. Number 1. Scrappy-Doo doesn't deserve the hate. I'm starting with this one because I think more people are waking up to this realization as time goes on. Scrappy was never my favorite character. In fact, I, like many others, found him pretty annoying. But the punishment for being annoying should not be that he is literally villainized for the rest of time. It worked fine as a twist in the live-action movie, but now it's catching on to the rest of the franchise, and I just don't think that's fair. In fact, in the hands of the right writers, I think Scrappy-Doo could potentially be a good character, were he given a little more depth and a less irritating voice. Number 2. Shaggy is the hottest Scooby-Doo character. Yeah, I know, this just took a turn, but hear me out. Through all the iterations of Scooby-Doo, Shaggy is canonically the character who's been laid the most, and I'm tired of people acting like that's weird. Yes, he's a stoner who eats dog food, but you know what else he is? He's kind. He's funny. He loves animals. He loves his friends. He's athletic. He can cook. And most importantly, he's not afraid to be himself. That's a rare quality, and it's worth holding on to when you can find it. So while everyone else is welcome to fight over Daphne, Velma, or Fred, I have planted my flag on Shaggy Stan Hill, and I am prepared to die there. Number 3. The Snow Ghost is the scariest OG villain. Just to be clear here, I'm not talking in terms of design. In that sense, he does fall much farther down the list, although not nearly as far as some. Like, really, Hank, you couldn't even change your clothes to become the minor 49er? Bro, try harder. Anyway, back to the Snow Ghost. As a kid, I was always more unsettled by him than anyone else, and I could never figure out why until I got older. It's because out of all the villains in the Where Are You lineup, he displays the cruelest, most twisted nature when he tries to murder Velma and Scooby. Which isn't to say that he's the only villain who ever tried to off the Mystery Inc. gang. He's not. There's actually way more attempted murder in this show than I ever realized as a kid. But it's the method that makes a difference. When villains like Captain Cutler or the Phantom Shadows tried to do away with the gang, they would do it by locking them in a sunken ship or pushing the drain pipe they were clinging to off the side of the building. Those crimes are horrible, don't get me wrong, but there's a certain level of detachment to them. Like, I'm just gonna push this pipe over, and then whatever happens, happens. That's not the case with the Snow Ghost. He chains Velma to a log and then tries to saw her in half. Holy crap, would that be a violent, not to mention messy death. Not only that, but he stuck around to watch. And when Scooby foils that plan, he proceeds to try and blow both of them up with dynamite. There's a level of sadism displayed there that I just don't see with any other villain, and it's terrifying. Number 4. I don't like Mystery Incorporated. This one might get me crucified, but oh well. I waited a long time to watch this show, and for years everyone was telling me, oh, if you like Scooby-Doo, watch Mystery Incorporated. I can't believe you haven't watched Mystery Incorporated, it's the best. And then I finally watched it, and I was severely underwhelmed. And I feel like I'm going crazy, because I seem to be the only person who doesn't like this show. I'm not saying it's terrible, by any means, it isn't, but there are a number of things about it that just feel off to me. The main thing that bothered me was what they did with the gang. Shaggy and Scooby remain largely unchanged, but as for the other three, this show seems to have begun a slow Flanderization of their characters. Quick note here for anyone who doesn't know what the term Flanderization means. It's a reference to Ned Flanders of The Simpsons, and the term is used to describe when a character's essential traits get exaggerated or oversimplified to the point that they become their entire personality. In Fred's case, they played up his love of setting traps and catching villains, and really leaned into him being a simple-minded himbo. Now, don't get me wrong, I love himbo Fred. What's New era Fred was very much a ditz too.
This telescope takes these little quarter thingies.
Those are Frank's.
I thought they were mine.
But it never got to the point where I questioned his ability to be a functional adult. I'm not sure Mystery Inc. Fred could last a day on his own.
How long have you been standing there?
Don't try that. You know the concept of time confuses me.
What's New Fred was also allowed to have interests outside of traps that made him feel like a three-dimensional person and not just a parody of himself. A similar issue arises with Daphne in this show, except instead of traps, her obsession is Fred. Don't get me wrong, I ship Daphne, and I don't mind a girl having a crush, but she deserved more than this. Something I've always loved about What's New are the upgrades they made to Daphne's character. Yes, she was still your classic girly girl with a love for fashion and romance, but she was also a total badass. What's New Daphne was just as smart as Velma, but whereas Velma was book smart, Daphne was creative and resourceful. Two types of intelligence which I think are largely undervalued. She could improvise traps and weapons and pick virtually any lock that the gang came across. I really fell in love with her in that show, so to see her regress the way she did in Mystery Inc. hurt me a little bit. As for Velma, the show really amps up her sass, which again is a trait that I like about her, but as her sass levels have risen, her compassion and social skills have gone down, making her come off as way more mean-spirited than she had to be, especially when it comes to her relationship with Shaggy. And speaking of which, this was another thing that really didn't work about the show, and even the people who like it seem to agree on that. Shaggy and Velma is one of those relationships, like Joey and Rachel on Friends, that looks fine on paper, but the characters just don't have the right kind of chemistry to pull it off. But honestly, that was a pretty minor issue, since they break up fairly early on, and Velma is pretty clearly in the closet anyway. The main thing I missed from this show was the true sense of camaraderie between the gang. Sure, in other versions they would disagree or roll their eyes at each other's antics, but I never found myself questioning why they were hanging out with each other. In this show, I did, and that's not how I want to feel watching Scooby-Doo. I don't want to hate on this show too hard, because I know a lot of people still love it, and there were some things that I liked about it. I liked that it wasn't afraid to embrace a darker tone, and that it had an overarching plot line, which is something you don't see much of in Scooby-Doo. Still, even with that, it's not a show I'll be rewatching anytime soon. And while we're on the subject of things that I won't be rewatching... Number 5. People need to calm down about Velma. Look, I get it, the show sucks. I hate it too. But people need to stop acting like it's the end of the world or that this show ruined Scooby-Doo forever. It didn't. In fact, one of the things that I like best about the Scooby-Doo franchise is the fact that it is continuously reinventing itself and trying new things. It's actually something I think more ongoing franchises could benefit from doing, because it allows you to be creative and try new things without being so concerned about what came before. Some of those things are going to work, and some of them are going to flop. Hard. That's okay, it's all part of the process. You can drop the things that didn't work and keep what did for the next iteration. I don't know how much we're going to be keeping from Velma, but the point still stands. The truth is, Scooby-Doo isn't going anywhere. We're going to see many different versions of it over the years. Some will be great, some will be terrible, and most will fall in between. None of that will take away from the shows we already love, and the gang will always be there to remind us that the things that scare us might not be so scary if we just take a closer look. So that's going to wrap up the video for today. Whatever your thoughts are, share them in the comments down below. Again, just be nice, especially you Mystery Inc. lovers. Like the video and subscribe if you want to see more, because I will undoubtedly be talking about Scooby-Doo again on this channel. Until next time, stay brilliant everybody, and I'll see you in the next one.